my name is Beck and welcome to a simple little video where I'm just going to talk about my favourite book covers, because I know that I'm somebody who gets attracted to a book cover in a bookstore, and I have in the past bought stuff based on the cover alone. I tend to lean towards more illustrated covers. I don't know if that's everybody's preference, but illustrated definitely covers some of the books that I have picked for this video. So my first choice in here is Spellslinger by Sebastian de Castell. This is a book that has a playing card aspect to the cover, and it has illustrated characters that are inverted on the front as well. And when you're looking at the book covers just in a bookstore, you don't know the context of the series, they just look cool. Honestly, I love their look, and when one of them rocked up in the mail from a publisher to me ages ago to review, I was like, oh, I'm gonna read this. And sure enough, it became one of my favorite young adult series ever. So that cover definitely did its job and hooked me, and I do love the aspect of the thematic significance to the cover as well as the line art to the cover as well. Often I don't really love faces on book covers, but I think when they're illustrated in the way Spellslinger and its other books are, it does a very good job of doing that. So this is the cover that is like the exception to the rule. I do love these covers so much. Another illustrated cover that I really like is Nevernight by J. Kristoff, and also his new Empire of the Vampire book that is coming out in September. So the covers that I like are the UK editions. I prefer, again, illustrated rather than photorealistic, and the other covers look a little bit photoreal to me, even though there is a character on the front cover of the US Nevernight and she has a mask on. It's not quite the same, so I prefer the illustrated editions. Also, the illustrator for this has an amazing Instagram. Whenever I see his work, I kind of go wide-eyed in amazement because he's got such a brilliant illustration style. It's all black and white and it looks very detailed and amazing. And I love that that translated into the Nevernight book. So Nevernight, God's Grave and Dark Dawn. The next one is probably a little bit of a surprise because I didn't necessarily love the content of this book, but I do really like the cover style because I've not really seen that illustration style present very much. And that is The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. This one has like a almost watercolor aspect to the characters that seem like charcoal / watercolor, and I like the way that line has contributed to the form of the book. It just composes the image really beautifully and it gives it this like ephemeral quality, and I really like that. I honestly want to see more of it because I really like this illustration style. I like the harder lines of Nevernight and Spellslinger, for example. Those are awesome too, but I really like this other style that is kind of prevalent on some of Brandon Sanderson's books as well, in the sense of they're more minimalist with drawings, but I think The Poppy War just does it in a bit of a different take, and I like that aspect of the way it's drawn as well. So I just like art and I like talking about art. I wonder if you can tell. Now, I know earlier I just said that I don't really love photoreal stuff on covers, but if you look at the Trials of Apollo books, and if you look at the Magnus Chase books, and even the Percy Jackson books in the Disney Hyperion US editions, I love all of those illustrations. I don't particularly love the faces of the characters, but I really like the composition of the work. A lot of the time the cover, especially with the Magnus Chase ones, are set with the character and whatever's happening going through the middle of the page, and I really like that. It draws your eye to all of the chaos that is inevitably happening because those adventure books are just so packed with stuff going on, and I love it. And I really like the color style as well. The use of color is just eye-catching and very poppy. Obviously it's created to attract the eye of a child because it's bright and colorful, but I must be on that level because it definitely attracts my eye as well. And then speaking of color, I really like the colors used in Saga. I think Fiona Staples is a brilliant illustrator and she really catches your eye in the way that she applies color. There's some beautiful double page spreads that you just get a sense of scale that's captured on her pages, and I love the way that she manages to convey that by using pinks and blues and purples, especially in space. Saga is such a brilliant comic series, and I don't think I would love it as much if she wasn't illustrating it. So it's told brilliantly as well, don't get me wrong, there are so many plot twists in that book and so much awesome characterization, but if it wasn't for Fiona Staples illustrating it, I don't think I would be as obsessed with it as I currently am. And now going from grand color scales to something a little bit more muted but not necessarily lacking, I'm talking about Robin Hobb, and I love her new covers of the UK editions. The way that the font is, especially on these books, is very languid and rolling, and it reminds me of a high fantasy writer, just in the sense that it's like calligraphy almost in her text. It also reminds me a little bit of bullet journaling and all that flowing text that tends to appear to make a bullet journal look more pretty. And And then there's also the covers themselves in the color, which has got the letterheads and the symbols of the characters in the book. So it has a royal significance. The font is quite catching, and then there's also the texture of the book and the colors. It reminds me of parchment, and so whenever I pick up the book, it is very well captured that this is a fantasy book. It's an old style fantasy book, and you're gonna love it. And sure enough, I adored it. And then next we're going back to photo real again, but it's a little bit different to just having a character's face on the cover, for example. So Joe Abercrombie has a couple of cover changes and rebrands, but the ones that I like personally are, again, like Robin Hobb with the parchment kind of aesthetic. He has that, but with foiling on the covers, so it's a bit shiny, and that appeals to my sense of like inner magpie, which is a bird that loves shiny stuff. So it appeals to that sense in me as well, but it also has photo real images of flags or weapons on the front. And usually if there's a fantasy book and there's a giant sword on the front, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be like a generic high fantasy book. It's got a sword, or it's got a guy with a sword on the front cover. I know what to expect, but I like the way that Joe Abercrombie's illustrators expanded on that theme, and they kind of crossed it with Robin Hobb's parchment kind of feel. I really enjoy the shininess, the texture, and the tactile way that I can just pick up one of those covers, and it appeals to my fantasy nerd because of the weapon on the front, the tactileness of the texture of the paper, and also the parchment feel and the shininess. It just, clearly it has the entire package to make me go, ooh, shiny, I'm gonna buy that because it's worked in the past. Similarly to the whole foil on the cover thing is Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is a standalone high fantasy book, and up one side of the book cover it has a dragon on it, and that just conveys this is a fantasy book to me, because if you don't have a dragon on the front cover, then clearly you're not doing fantasy right, unless you are one of the covers that I have previously mentioned. Then I don't have any qualms. Priory of the Orange Tree is so delicate in its intricacies of the dragon. You can already tell that it's a very specific kind of dragon, and that's what Samantha Shannon was going for in her inner workings of her stories. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I really enjoyed the way that it was eye-catching and it was shiny and foily, and I just really love, clearly, I love shiny books. And then I could go on and on and on, but I'm going to talk about the last book that is on this current list, and that is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. Both Kings of the Wild and Bloody Rose did this in its cover aesthetic, and it really tapped into that watercolorness of the Puppy War. It does have a group of characters on the front of Kings of the Wild, but the way this watercolor kind of image captures the characters and how it's all brown in color scheme, it conveys how almost dirty and hard the journey is going to be and how weathered these characters are, but it also captures a sense of togetherness, and I like that it's kind of a mixture between reality and also cartoon, the way that it's drawn. So it doesn't have that off-putting uncanny valley aspect of having a face staring at me on a book cover, but it's enough artistic flair for me to be interested. And I think that's a very fine line to walk, because again, I don't really like real people on covers unless they're done in an illustrated watercolor or artistic way, and that's definitely what Kings of the Wild achieved. And so there you go, that brings me to the end of me raving about covers that I like. Let me know a book cover down below that you like. I'm sure there are tons that I've missed, but these are the few that I wanted to spotlight because they've got things that I particularly enjoy. But thank you so much for watching this video. I will chat with you down in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.